Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us author Susan Snow. She is a trauma resiliency coach, speaker. And obviously, we talked about her being an author, so we'll talk about her book. Today, we'll talk about her book, The Other Side of the Gun, My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. Let's dive into the story behind the story. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome back once again to the show, Susan. This time on the KJ Master this time on the Author's Voice with KJ. So we'll talk about your book. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey for people who do not know about this book. How did you think of becoming an author? What was the inspiration from it? Dealing with a lot of things yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the book was inspired by trauma that I went through at 17. My dad was a Los Angeles police detective, and he was there was a planned out assassination of him for testifying. He was testifying, and he was the lead detective on this case, and so he was testifying the day of Halloween, 1985. He went to go pick up my brother, who was 6 at the time, and they laid in wait and murdered my dad. My mom, unfortunately, and I were called to the school. We witnessed his body in the aftermath. And after that, obviously, my life changed tremendously from being a normal 17-year-old girl to going through this trauma. And it took me many, many years to get the help that I needed to heal from this. I wasn't until I was 30 years old that I was able to heal from that trauma. And along the way, I did go to one therapist who was not helpful whatsoever in the very beginning, and kind of lost hope. And I hid behind what people told me I was, which was brave and strong and all of those things. And it wasn't until I had moved away with my husband and my children that I was faced with another tragedy, which was the Columbine shootings here in Colorado. And that caused me to have flashbacks, and I went into a mental break. At that point, I had no choice but to get help. And that started my journey of healing. Many years of doing different types of therapy, cognitive therapies, and things like that, I was able to move through a lot of the pain. And I reaped a lot of lessons on the way. And so when I got to be about 50 years old, I felt like I was mentally okay enough and had enough tools to be able to write a book. And part of the reason I wrote the book is because for so many years, there were people that had made up my story in their head, and a lot of it was not true. So initially when I wrote the book, it was mainly obviously for me to heal, but also I needed people to see who I really was. And in that journey and figuring this all out, I also realized that I wrote the book because there was still so much pain and anger around my dad's death, especially in the law enforcement community, and still is to this day. It's almost been 40 years, but I thought that if people saw my healing, if people saw the resiliency side of it, that it would give them some peace themselves and allow them to heal. And as I kept going, I realized that not only would they benefit, but other people who have gone through trauma in their life, that because of some of the lessons I learned along the way, I wanted to be able to give people hope and show them that they can heal from anything that they've gone through in their life, and it doesn't have to have a hold over their life anymore. So that's where the book was born out of.
Absolutely, absolutely, Susan. So, in terms of writing this book, what have you written in the book? You want to help all those people to take care of their anger. As you said, still that sort of an anger is there amongst the police force and law enforcement, and even for a lot of other people also. So, but it is not easy to bring all those things together into a book. How did you manage to do that? How did this book come out? What's inside the book?
Well, what I ended up doing, because obviously I didn't want to talk about the trauma throughout the entire book because people would be severely depressed. So what I ended up doing is I split it into two sections. The first section talks about the trauma. It talks about how I felt at the time, how it affected my life, how it affected my relationships that were around me. And the second part of it was how I got through it. What was the turning point? What were the things that I utilized in order to heal from my trauma? And I did that so that people, as they got to the end, I wanted, basically when I put the book together, I wanted to hold the reader by the hand and guide them through the journey. And at the end is the hope. In the end, you see the healing and the resiliency side of doing the work. And that was important for me to be able to relay to my readers.
Absolutely, Susan. In terms of the title, The Other Side of the Gun, I can understand a bit, but I want to understand from you exactly what does this mean to you, and also what should it mean for the audience.
So basically, my concept when I came out with the title and the artwork was that I wanted to take something that was so painful and so ugly and turn it into something beautiful. So the other side of the gun is my perception and my experience of what it was like to be a gun violence survivor, and that I was able to take that ugliness, and my legacy is to turn something that was so ugly and so tragic into something more beautiful.
Right. Could you explain that a bit? Means after that other side, what does exactly the other side of the gun for a common person? How should they understand it?
So, it's a metaphor,
I
obviously.
know.
I just, I think for anybody looking at it, it's what happens on the other side of a tragedy like that. What happens on the other side of it? Everybody focused on the ugliness of it. That's what the media focused on. That's what people focused on, right? But there are some beautiful things that can come out of tragedy. And so that's kind of what I wanted to relay, is that beautiful things can come out of tragedy. So
Right, right. So how should people understand? And in your case, how what beautiful things can you talk about so that people can understand? Okay, this is
sure.
what Susan means.
Sure. So what I mean is this, like I said before, anyone can heal from whatever it is that you've gone through, any traumatic event, right? And when you choose to heal from something like that, what you're doing is you're taking your power back. You're taking your power back from that thing that hurt you or that person that hurt you, and you're letting them know, you can no longer hurt me anymore. I'm going to heal from this. And because I'm going to heal from this, I'm going to have the life that I deserve to have. And so that is mainly my message, is just taking that step, taking that leap. For me, it was kind of, I had no choice but to get healthy. I was faced with another tragedy that caused me to have, it wasn't my tragedy, but it caused me to have flashbacks, which brought me back to my trauma. But in doing that, I had hope. I found hope. I found my therapist that finally understood where I was, met me where I was, and was able to move me forward so that I could heal from this. And that's the beautiful part of it, right? When you choose and you take your power back and you start to do the work, what you find at the end of it is that you are able to release all the pain and all the stuff that's connected to your trauma. It no longer has a hold over you in the way that it used to before you started your journey. And so that becomes the beautiful part. That becomes the place where you find out who you really are and how resilient you can be as a human being. We're all resilient. And if we allow ourselves to be, right? If we do the work. And when I say do the work, I mean, really be able to be vulnerable and dive in, and but make sure that you have someone that understands you and that gives you that safe space to be able to do that. And that understands that kind of trauma as well, because there's a lot of therapists that lump us all into one big group, and different traumas are different traumas, and there's different modalities for those traumas. So, I think that was the most important message that I wanted people to know, is that, just taking that step. Yes, it's scary. It's scary to jump off that ledge and say, I'm going to get healed. I'm going to heal from this. But at the same time, it's priceless. The feeling of not having your pain held over you anymore is priceless. And so that's what I want for other people. I want other people to have the same experiences that I had, as far as the hope that I felt when I finally got the right help, and the feeling that I wasn't nuts, that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't out of control. Because when you have PTSD, you tend to feel that way. So I wanted people to know that, you're not crazy and you're not alone. And when you take the steps to get healthier, it's incredible, because then you become the person that you have always wanted to be. So.
Absolutely. Susan, so did those people in the law enforcement get any closure from this book? How was the response to this particular book? What about your closure?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can tell you a story for my closure. So I've heard from many in law enforcement that have read my book, and they actually they thanked me for writing it, because it did help them to see me be able to heal from this and see the resiliency side of it. It did help them. I had one gentleman say that, he always wondered what my life was like. He always wondered, how I did after all of that. Because all of the focus was obviously on my brother. He was there when my dad was murdered, and my dad saved his life. So, but, the people that knew him and knew me always wondered, right? So once they were able to see into my life and see what I went through, but see me on the other side of it, it did give them that closure that they needed as well. And I was very grateful that I was able to have those conversations. For myself, I had an incident. Let's just say this. So after the book came out, I went into Los Angeles and I had a book signing there and a speaking engagement. And when we were leaving, I had told my husband that I wanted to go to the my dad's visit my dad at the cemetery. And as I was at the cemetery, something in my head kept telling me I needed to go to the school. And anytime I've ever been around that school, I've had full panic attacks, and it's been ugly. Like, it's just, I shake. All the things that happen with your nervous system goes out of whack. But there is a placard that LAPD decided many years ago that they would put placards up for the officers who were killed in the line of duty. And my dad's is on the front side of the school, on the main street, but on the front side of the school. He was killed on the back side of the school. So something told me as I was standing there at the cemetery that I needed to go to the school. And I told my husband, before we get on that plane, I want to do one more thing. I want to go to the school. And he kind of looked at me funny, but he was like, okay. And for me, it was like, I wanted to see what this book has done for me, So I went to the school and I found that placard. And as I was standing there taking pictures with it and looking at it, there was not 1 ounce of my body that was nervous, anxious, nothing, for the first time. And as I was standing there looking at it, something in me said, let's see how far you can go with this. So I told my husband, one more stop, but I was driving. So he said, oh, okay. I didn't tell him what I was thinking. I just said, one more stop. And I proceeded to drive up the street in front of the school, and I started to turn right on the street that connects the backside and the front side of the school. And my husband looked at me and said, what are you doing? And I said, give me a minute. And I drove up. I made a right onto that backside school street, went up the street, turned the car around, parked. And I was able to describe to my husband everything I saw that night. And I had not 1 ounce of anxiety. I was not in panic mode. I was completely at peace. And my husband looked at me and he said, oh my God, we're full circle. And I said, yeah. I mean, we were crying, but in that moment, I thought, this is something I never thought possible. I never thought that I would be healed enough to be able to go back to that place, and that same place that I was the night my dad was murdered. And I was able to do it. And I tell people that story because I want to show them, this is how far you can take it. This is how far, your resiliency can go, right? And I was proud of myself in that moment, and grateful in that moment that I was able to go there, but also to share it with the man that was with me from the very beginning and was with me that night after it had happened. So there was just so much in that situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you want, readers of your book? What key message inside you want readers of your book to take away with them?
I think my biggest message is just to let people know they're not alone, that there is hope for healing from trauma, and that you have to take a chance on yourself. Your healing is your healing. It's nobody else's healing. So if you're going to do anything, you do it for yourself. I know there's a lot of people that do it for their kids, or they do that for their spouse, or their what. No, you need to do it for yourself. And when you do that, the people around you will heal as well. So that's the message that I really want to put out to the people, is just showing them that if I can get through something like this, you can get through whatever it is that you've gone through. and it takes work and it's not easy. I'm not going to candy coat it. It's not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, but it's so worth it in the end.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn about all this, about resiliency and so many things from you, Susan. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, connect with your book, connect with you for coaching. What's the best way for them to do so?
They can reach out to me. I have a website. It's susansnowspeaks.com. It's my one-stop shop. I have information on my speaking, my coaching, and there's some information on my book as well.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.